She's got her coffee. Everything's fine. That's how it works.
I had my mental breakdown earlier. We're all good.
Okay. All right, computer, don't let me down. 3, 2, 1.
Hi.
Hi. This is Matthew.
This is Eric.
And we're on the Odd Atheist Friends.
Hi, I'm Aaron Rod.
Hi, I'm Andrew Torres of Opening Arguments.
Hi, I'm Dr. Ben Davis.
Hi, this is David G. McPhee.
Hello, I'm Dr. Hector Garcia.
Hello, I'm Dr. Jerry Coyne.
Hi, I'm Nate Phelps.
Hi, I'm Shelley Siegel.
Hi, I'm Thomas Smith of Serious Inquiries Only.
Hi, I'm Seth Andrews. I'm host of thethinkingatheist.com.
Hi, I'm Ethan Siegel.
Hi, I'm Robert Stanley of the Right to Reason podcast, and I took a left at the Valley.
And I loved it.
I know we shouldn't have to scream that we're atheists. You know, we don't have non-astrologers and all that. But with the religious people taking over the world, I mean, we can either speak up or be pushed into a corner.
I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist.
Coming at you from the Guillotine Shop, this is Lift of the Valley. My name is Kevin, and I am an organ donor. Yes, I've donated many bodies. Joining me as usual is a team that can slam a revolving door. She starred on Man vs. Wild and Wild Lost, Nazi.
Absolutely. Was there any doubt?
No doubt at all.
There was never any doubt.
No.
And she almost had a heart attack once, but then her heart decided it was foolish enough to attack her. Kirsten.
I instill fear even in my own organs.
Ladies, welcome back. I hope you had a great couple of weeks, actually. And you had to, unfortunately, take a week off. Technical difficulties.
But that's okay.
Let's just say that.
That's okay. You know, our audience will be twice as excited to hear it. Delighted, excited.
Yeah, sure hope so, anyway. Yeah, unfortunately, the old laptop sound card crashed, so ended up to buy a whole new computer for that. Well, it is. We're back anyway. That's what matters.
We're back. We're back and better than ever.
Exactly.
We are very hard to keep down.
So today we're going to be talking to Bernard Lamborelle, and we'll be going to talk about his book called The Covenant, and his very interesting premise about the origins of the Christian God. But first, let's do a bit of chit-chat. I guess we got a lot to talk about.
Boy, do we ever.
Yes.
And I don't even know what we're talking about. So it's been one of those weeks, hasn't it?
It's been 2 of those weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess let's start with some interesting news. So the Canadian Senate decided to finally pass marijuana legislation.
I was a little high at the time and, and missed it.
So weed, pot, call it what you want, is going to be legal coming September. And now I think they've pushed it back to actually October 14th, something like that. Marijuana was criminalized in 1923, and as of 2016, there was 17,773 Canadians charged with possession. And that's a thing of the past now.
Yeah.
That's right. So, if you want to get high, I guess, you got to come north of the 49 now.
I know.
Yeah, no kidding.
Do you hear that the people, are there more people that are for it than against it? Or you still hear
I don't think I've heard anybody against it at this point.
Yeah. I've heard a couple. They just don't know how it's all going to play out in terms of driving laws or, the prices of it, where it's going to be sold. So they're a little apprehensive about the distribution and consequences more than they are the marijuana itself.
Well, that's going to happen from province to province. So every province is going to have a bit of different rules about these kind of things. But what is really fun to notice that over 50% of the there's been a raise of 50% of Americans more willing to come up north now all of a sudden. Even our old friend Robert Stanley said, "Hey, you guys legalize pot? Hey, I got a reason to visit now."
That's right.
Because we weren't good enough for him, apparently.
Nah, that's right. Okay. You guys want to say something about unfortunately, the also trade war that keeps going between Canada and the U.S.? What do we say about this?
The funniest thing that's come out of this is when Trump was standing in front of, I think he was standing in front of a small business trade association of some kind, and he was saying that the tariffs are so bad in Canada. They're so bad that when people go down to the United States to buy shoes, they've got to scuff them up so they look old, so they don't have to pay the tariff. So they don't have to pay the tariffs. And I nearly spit my iced tea out all over the floor. It's like, what in the world? He doesn't understand the difference between taxes and tariffs, and when people have. So most of my friends are going, let's go down to the U.S. and scuff some up, okay?
Scuff some shoes.
I feel like of anything to do with this, the most that I've seen pop up is about the shoes.
Right now I'm trying to arrange so we can interview a shoe mule.
Exactly.
There was an article in the Beaver Town about a shoe mule that could cram up 9 pairs of shoes up his ass.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
So I'm going to try to get an interview with one of these people.
Oh, that would be just golden.
Fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Let's just hope he before the interview he hasn't had to bring any stilettos over. I mean, it was such a bald face, whatever. It was such a lie, and so there was no reality to it whatsoever, and yet I think there were actually some people in the U.S. that probably believed that we're scuffing up pairs of $100 and $150 shoes just so we don't have to pay a non-existent tariff. That's wild.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when you're driving to the border with your car, and I'm sure they start looking in the footwell when you drive and see what pair of shoes you're wearing. Sir, will you step outside to show us your shoes?
We need to check the level of scuffedness.
That's right. Yes, three or above, and you've got a tariff facing you, sir. Come clean.
That will scuff this. All right. Well, enough with the funny stuff and the nice stuff. We've got to go into the bad news, unfortunately. There's been a comprehensive study that suggests the Antarctic has lost 3 trillion tons of ice between 92 and 2017. This has been published in Nature. The annual warming is 3 times worse than estimated 59 billion tons to 159 billion tons a year. So now the ice sheet is apparently 24 million square kilometers, and it holds 60% of all fresh water on Earth.
Wow.
And it's rapidly disappearing. So, global climate change, guys, we might want to get on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, we can't go by without talking about the biggest story of this week, of course, which was the U.S. immigration thing, the holding the children in cages.
It's such an atrocity that I literally have been upset, depressed, angry, frustrated, trying to think of ways to help, trying to think of something in the legal world that is happening, and it's becoming. There was a cartoon of a woman and a friend walking, and she said, "My desire to be well informed is at odds with my desire to remain sane." And that's about where I am.
Right now. As we speak, there's over 2,300 children that have been taken from parents. The funny thing is, illegal immigration in the state is actually it's a misdemeanor. It's not even like a huge crime, and these children are held back and their parents are locked up. The funny thing is if you look how people are divided along political parties, and you ask how unacceptable is it, 99% of Democrats, which of course is a number you would expect, 66% of independents, and only 39% of Republicans thought this was unacceptable. The rest of them thought, yeah, it's fine. And 20% of them, those Republicans, actually weren't sure.
It's a felony misdemeanor, which means that if these parents or these adults or children and they all go to court. Little 3-year-old children do go to immigration court, and if they have no one to represent them, they're guilty and they go off to detention. But the fact that it is a misdemeanor is a little misleading because it's a felony misdemeanor. And if any of those people want to go through this process in terms of being granted asylum, that will be held against them. The only recourse that they're going to have is to say, I wanted my child back more than I cared about the plea. I didn't understand and I was coerced. But they've structured this to be the maximum amount of pain on as many brown children and parents as they can.
Yeah, and amongst all this, the funny thing is Trump's approval is actually standing at 45% right now, which is higher than some of his predecessors, which is amazing, absolutely amazing. I don't understand this. How people are not seeing this? I mean, even the UN came out and basically condemned the United States for doing something like that.
Well, you know the old movies of Hitler standing there and saying it's all the Jews' fault.
Yes.
And you looked at all those people doing the Heil Hitler. Is there any difference?
No, I don't like to use the Hitler comparison because a lot of people say you use the Hitler comparison.
How can you avoid it?
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, exactly. You can't avoid it.
There's the base. There's the 45%.
Absolutely.
And this may be harsh, but that's the base.
Yeah, I don't know. And the funny thing is, they don't seem to realize that you've traumatized these kids forever now. These kids are going to be remembering this all through their life. This is how you create terrorists. This is how you create criminals. These kids, from now on, will never, ever, ever trust any position of authority, government, police, or whatsoever. You're just making the problem worse. 20 years down the road, all these kids right now are going to be problems. And it's like,
And I mean, look at what's been done to them. Why should they trust?
No, exactly. They have no reason to trust any government authority after this.
I'm bringing this up as an extreme example. However, a horrible part of Canadian history it was, the church did and the government did separate First Nations children.
Yes. To this day, we're still paying for that.
And you look at the generations since that time and the trauma and the consequences. The trauma may not be as endemic as it was because those children were kept at in horrible conditions at school for many years. But the effect on young brains, regardless of the amount of separation, is going to cause the same problems.
They've set something in motion here they might actually come to regret 20, 30, 40 years from now.
No,
Big time.
I think this have to go to the courts and or wait to midterms. And the thought of children languishing until it can go through that process is intolerable. Yeah. Just intolerable.
And on top of that, speaking of Orange Menace, the United States decided to quit the UN Human Rights Council.
Yeah.
You guys winning yet?
Great timing, you guys.
You guys winning yet? Because they basically quoted, because of, quote, bias against Israel. Okay. Which is kind of funny because they kind of overlooked the human rights abuses from Cuba, Venezuela, and China. So, okay. So, this is the first because no country has ever dropped out voluntarily of this. They're the first time.
You know that sentence, Kevin, is no country has ever. I think you can put that in front of almost anything that the administration has done this far.
Yes, absolutely. And the funny thing is, apparently, recently, Russia has piped up saying, hey, we'll take that seat.
Oh boy!
No, it's just going to be wonderful. We will no longer have the UN, but we're going to have North Korea and Russia on our side. There we go. The top three.
You know, Americans used to really think that Russia and North Korea on your side, and you lose Canada and the European Union. Hey, what's the point?
Yeah, who cares? We all get great haircuts.
And last but certainly not least, Coco. The gorilla died.
Oh,
I saw that. I'm so sad.
She passed in her sleep.
She was wonderful. She was very kind. She loved having a kitten as a pet.
Yeah, she loved kittens. Yeah. And she died at the age of 46.
46? She had a good life.
Well, I'm not sure how long gorillas live, but I'm pretty sure they can live longer than that.
I don't know. I know that living to 40s is pretty, like chimpanzees is pretty typical.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. What an inspiration.
Yes.
What a beautiful
I mean,
animal she was.
You always think of closest primate and all that. You think of chimpanzees. And you never think of gorillas as much more than brutes, like primate brutes. But, that gorilla was obviously smart enough to communicate with people, and she did that for ages. I remember seeing a video of her having a laugh with Robin Williams.
Yeah.
Of all people,
Yeah, and Mr. Rogers. She met Mr. Rogers.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, she met Mr. Rogers, and that was his favorite episode of all that he did. He loved sitting and talk, doing some American Sign Language with Coco, and they just sat and looked at each other for a while, and he said he really, felt inspired by her.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
There's a nice little anecdote where they say one time they came to visit Coco, and in her enclosure she had destroyed the sink. There's like a little sink. When they asked her in sign language, what happened to the sink, she blamed the kitten.
Oh my god. That is priceless.
The cat did it, right?
Yeah.
So it's just rest in peace, Coco. I mean, hopefully there'll be much more gorillas and members of her species.
I think there are. I think there are.
She wasn't unique. There were more.
She was
just
a
famous.
pioneer.
Yeah, she was a pioneer.
She was a pioneer.
Exactly.
Yeah, bless her.
Yeah, perfect. All right, my dear Nancy, you ready for a top 10?
Sure.
Right.
Always ready for a top 10. Okay, today we're going to do, I always say this is going to be a little different. I'm tired of, I shouldn't say that anymore. It is, I mean, I took this on so that each week would be a little bit different, but here I am, more mouth and brains. Anyway, this week we are going to do the top 10 children's books. Anybody here a fan of children's books or remember reading?
When I was a kid, I guess.
We have about 2 bookshelves full of children's books at our house currently.
Now this will be interesting because I'm pretty sure most of these books I will not be familiar with because I grew up in a different culture myself, right?
Well,
that's French Canadian.
We'll see who's in Kirsten's library and who's in your memory and who I read myself and read to the kids. Okay, number 10 is Madeleine L'Engle's A Wrinkle in Time, number 10. They had a movie out, but it was substantially changed. Anybody read A Wrinkle in Time?
I've not read that yet.
Neither have I.
Read it as an adult. If you didn't read it as a child, it's wonderful. The heroine is a girl named Meg Murray, and her father, who's a physicist and familiar with time travel, disappears. And Meg and her brother Charles Wallace and her other brother Calvin set out across the universe to... Oh, I'm sorry, Calvin is a friend. They set off across the universe to find the father, and so they have all of these adventures, and it was one of the first science fictions that had a girl as the heroine. It's a beautiful, beautiful book, and really worth reading. Okay, number 9. Ursula Le Guin, A Wizard of Earthsea. Anybody read?
I have not read it, but it is on my list of books to read.
Ah, why would that be on your list? I mean, is it science fiction or fantasy that you like? Or?
Definitely.
Yeah, because she's well known for that. This one has to do with a young boy named Sparrowhawk, and with a smattering of magic he learned from his aunt, a local witch. He becomes a he becomes a sorcerer in training. So it has to do with his adventures. And
there's a whole
fantasy.
series with that, isn't there?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know how many there are, but it's really a marvelous book, and I can understand why it would be on your list. So read it and then tell us about it.
Will do.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 8, here's one that everybody should be familiar with: Roald Dahl's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, did you read it or see the movie?
No, I just saw both movies.
I have not actually read it.
Yeah, it is one. Of course, he did a lot of books. Stuart Little. So he enjoyed writing for children. So, but Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the Grandpa Joe, Oompa Loompas, and the Golden Tickets, and all of that, and Willy Wonka have really, been part now of the culture of the U.S. He's so well ingrained. Number 7, A.A. Milne, Winnie the Pooh. Did you do any Winnie the Pooh?
I believe I have.
Yeah,
That's far back, though.
Very gentle stories for young children, and it's about Christopher Robin. The books were for his own child.
Wasn't the Winnie the Pooh named after a bear?
Yes, he was a teddy bear
in a Winnipeg Zoo.
Well, there was the bear and Piglet and Tigger and Eeyore the donkey, and they're just wonderful, calming. I actually have my original Winnie the Pooh book in my library.
Wow.
So, yeah. Goes back a ways, that's for sure.
My favorite was always Eeyore.
Yeah.
I love Eeyore.
It was written in 1926. So it's entertained a lot of children. Of course, there are still Winnie the Pooh T-shirts and kids things.
My aunt has a Winnie the Pooh tattoo.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Number 6, and you're going to have to help me with this because I've never said this out loud or know whether it's correct. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry.
Antoine de Saint-Exupéry.
Thank you. The Little Prince.
Little Prince.
I can do the Little Prince part. Ever read that one?
I believe so, yes, but it's so far gone, yes.
But that was in
little
French.
Planet.
Yeah. That was the aviator who disappears into the desert. So it's a very famous one. Number 5, Louisa May Alcott, Little Women. She also wrote Little Men, but Little Women has been turned into movies, and it's a play and so forth. But to follow all these girls, they were portrayed so that you almost felt they were in the room with you. They were just beautiful. Did you ever read that, Kirsten?
So far, I haven't read any of these, but I've heard of all of them.
Yeah, Little Women would be one that you'd enjoy. That is way back in 1868, and you can still enjoy every bit of it.
Patreon goal: have Kirsten read all these books.
Yeah, there you go. Number 4, Lewis Carroll, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, which is just great. All of the children don't always get all of the lines that are given to the various characters, but you can read them as an adult, and they're just wonderful as well.
Drug messages and Alice in Wonderland, don't get that right away. Yeah, I can understand that.
Any age, it was written so beautifully, and of course we all know that Lewis Carroll was a nom de plume of Charles Dodson. Number 3, this is one of my favorites, Maurice Sendak's Where the Wild Things Are.
We found one that I've read.
There you go. The writing and the illustrations were just wonderful.
I didn't like the illustrations.
You didn't? You thought they were too scary?
No, I didn't think it was scary. I just didn't like. I thought they were rough, and I wanted more finesse out of my monsters, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I think there's something about them when your mom is sitting there reading them. They're not as ugly. You can kind of give a softer meaning to.
Too much of a critic here, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's not. It's everything that's ugly is not necessarily bad and scary.
And she looks at me when she says that again.
And they've made a movie out of that as well.
Out of me being ugly? What?
I think it was an animated.
I will sue for
No, it's live action.
Oh, live action?
Yeah, it's quite interesting.
Oh, speaking of live action and cartoon, number 2 is C.S. Lewis, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Of course.
When we read the whole series in school.
Yeah, too much of a Jesus metaphor in there, I think.
Yeah, when you read them, were you aware of the Christian metaphor, or did you read them just, as the story of the fantasy?
We did the whole series for book studies in elementary school. I think it was in probably grade 6 or 7.
Yeah, that's good. And number 1, any guesses as to what you think the number 1 children's book would be? It's going to maybe a surprise. Here we go. E.B. White, Charlotte's Web.
Oh, of course. Of course.
Charming, lovely story. So much in there about life and death and relationships. Beautiful story. Yes. So, number 1.
I haven't read it, but I still have my copy of the movie on VHS.
Okay.
I still own that same copy.
Okay, so you can enjoy that. Any book that you read as a child that wasn't on the list that you'd like to see on the top 10 list? Secret Garden.
I was thinking about that. And although I did not read it, I'm quite aware of it.
Little House on the Prairie.
Yes, of course.
As a kid, I wasn't much of a reader, until a little bit later.
Yeah.
I read everything I could get my hands on.
I think these kind of lists about these kind of books are going to become more and more rare because the media of television and film today is so good.
Yeah.
That, kids are going to say, why am I reading this when I can watch it?
Yeah. I still have Mary Poppins. I still have my Mary Poppins and my Winnie the Pooh books as a child.
I have a very long list of books that I need to read, and I really need to start working on it because I own these books.
Yeah.
It's a shame Christina's not here because there was a fan theory that Mary Poppins actually went to Hogwarts.
Oh, I'm sure she's aware of that. I've heard that theory.
Yeah.
Yeah, that she's
Why
a
not?
witch.
Why not? Anyway, maybe that'll encourage you to get to your list, encourage some of our listeners to read them as adults or read them to their kids.
Mm-hmm. I'm slowly working on one of the books that's on my list.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And see, I'm a perfect example of what happens to a grown-up who reads all of those children's stories as a child.
You become the wandering Jew and immortal.
The one I'm reading is not a children's story.
All right. Thank you so much, Nancy. So, my dear Kirsten.
Yes.
You got another brilliant moment for us?
Oh, I do.
To you, by religion.
And guys, guess what?
What?
The swooshy lady is back.
The swooshy lady is
back already.
One of our favorites.
She was just with us.
I know, but we really like her. We can take the seat.
Hold on, let me guess. She is stopping the planet from tumbling into something else.
She's actually not stopping anything this time.
Oh, really?
She says Jesus lives in a mansion and loves dancing and desserts.
Well, yeah, of course. Jesus always was a party animal. Everybody knows that.
Yeah, so we were invited a couple of times but couldn't go, remember?
Yeah, that was a hobo that invited us. He just thought he was Jesus.
Oh.
Just days after Cat Care, the self-proclaimed Christian prophetess told an audience that she's seen Jesus and he's 6 feet tall and very handsome. She's back with more details about her friendship with her Savior. This speech was given at Heaven's Invitation 2018 conference, and at one point you hear her talk about what Jesus' mansion looks like.
It'd be so funny if somebody would come out and Jesus would appear, but he's like 4'9".
Oh, that would be so funny.
And it was a fun mirror that just made him look like he was
right.
6 feet tall.
Back then,
Jesus appears in a fun house.
That's a movie right there.
There you go.
Jesus Christ doesn't live in the throne room all the time. He actually has his own mansion. He deserves it. He had to come and live as a man and put up with it, with all that, right?
Oh, yeah.
He died for us, so I think he deserves his own place. He has a magnificent mansion that's in the biggest field of flowers that all sing. They sing all the time, and I mean, they have faces, and they sing, and they're beautiful, and I've seen inside the mansion.
That's so much better than alien abduction stories, don't you think?
Well, you know what? I'm wondering, if you got all these big mansions, you know how much dusting you have to do in a mansion? You're spending half your time. What do? You grab a piece of cloud and you just dust your furniture?
Well, doesn't he have the bottom tier angels do that? So they work their way up?
Maybe.
I would just create my own air currents.
Yeah, I guess
just put a little cloud on air currents and just send it around.
That's just great for the neighbor of Jesus. He gets all the dust.
Jesus Roomba.
We ought to send her one for a present.
She might swish it away.
Apparently, it's a big place where there's tables labeled with all kinds of desserts. Every dessert you'd ever want because Jesus likes sweets. And there's dancing there all the time. And he plans special parties when someone comes home. He will actually send someone in his golden chariot with an invitation to that individual, which is given by one of his angels, his personal angels. And they will read off of this beautiful scroll that they are going to be the guest of honor, the honored guest at a party thrown by Jesus Christ. He loves flowers, dancing, and sweets. That's his 3 favorite things besides us.
You know full well that his favorite dessert is devil food cake, right?
I was thinking of Sweet Jesus.
Bam! Yes!
I was
Jesus
looking
ice
at you, and
cream.
I'm waiting for the Sweet Jesus. Do you think he's going to be the head of now Sweet Jesus franchise?
Maybe.
Why not? He
Maybe.
likes sweets.
This dessert, this Jesus dessert is brought to you by Sweet Jesus Ice Cream.
Yeah. I thought for sure that's where you were
that's
going.
not where I was
That's
going.
all right.
Instead of angel food cake,
I
you
should
prefer
know better
steak.
than to know where you're going.
And apparently Jesus gives everyone pizza and ice cream because no one has allergies in heaven, so there's no issue there. The slices and scoops are huge, but don't worry because there's no weight gain, nothing. They all dance because heaven is just a child's birthday party that never ends. Now, to me, this sounds like a trip through the looking glass into Wonderland. And also, what if someone doesn't like pizza or sweets? Then what? Are you forced to like those things simply because he does?
You know, there could be a Twilight Zone episode there.
Yeah.
You think you're in heaven, you're eating dessert with Jesus, and then you realize you go on a dance floor and it's playing disco. Then you realize it's hell.
Oh.
Da, da, da.
And all of the desserts are desserts that you hate.
Yeah, fig pudding.
Yeah, and it suddenly switches from everything you like to now the music suddenly becomes chilling and
It's country music now.
Yeah, things.
What is
become
wrong with
wavy.
country music?
Oh God, let me start the ways.
I'm surprised you didn't have a comment on the singing flowers with faces.
What? Oh, yeah, well, you know,
I mean, that's so ordinary.
I'm allergic, so.
As soon as I heard that, I immediately thought Alice in Wonderland, right there.
Yeah, I think whatever her name is has been taking too much swishing.
A little bit too much swishing and not enough swooshing?
Whatever she's sniffing is good.
We definitely need to hang out with her for a while.
Oh, God, yeah.
We need an interview with her.
We do.
That would be a day.
All right.
All right. On to a little bit more of a depressing note. Now that fun's all done with. Walgreens pharmacist refuses to give woman medicine to induce miscarriage.
Ugh.
On Tuesday, Arizona teacher Nicole Arteaga heard the devastating news from her doctor that after 2 months of pregnancy, the baby's development had stopped and ultimately she would have had a miscarriage. The doctor gave her a prescription for misoprostol, a medication that would induce the miscarriage since she didn't want to go through any invasive surgery. But on Friday, when she went to a Walgreens to pick up the drug, the pharmacist refused to sell it to her. Arteaga explained the situation in a Facebook post. I stood at the mercy of this pharmacist, explaining my situation in front of my 7-year-old and 5 customers standing behind, only to be denied because of his ethical beliefs. I get it, we all have our beliefs, but what he failed to understand is this isn't the situation I had hoped for. This isn't something I wanted. This is something I have zero control over. He has no idea what it's like to want nothing more than to carry a child to full term and be unable to do so. If you have gone through a miscarriage, you know the pain and emotional roller coaster it can be. I left Walgreens in tears, ashamed and feeling humiliated by a man who knows nothing of my struggles, but feels it is his right to deny medication prescribed to me by my doctor.
Yeah, first of all, this is prescribed by her doctor.
Yes.
So fuck your opinion.
Yep.
Second of all, if she's carrying a dead fetus, this is going to become life-threatening to her.
Absolutely.
It's going to turn septic, and it's going to threaten her life. So fuck your opinion again.
Well, I tell you what to me is really a horrible part of this story, in that the pharmacist is talking to her in front of her children,
yes,
and other customers, when he should pull her aside,
absolutely,
and have a conversation with her that's private, so that this poor woman doesn't have to be explaining her medical situation to others. I know there are drugstores up here where it says, you can only stand.
Yeah,
so
they have
close.
a line.
They have a privacy.
Yeah.
But
a buffer zone, right?
Yeah, and at that point, I believe that he was required to send her to another
I sure hope so.
But it should have been done. I mean, the whole thing is horrible, but it was just exacerbated by having this woman to endure it in public.
People, for the first thing that comes to mind is say, well, just go to another pharmacy. Yeah, but if you live in a small town, and he's the only pharmacist in the area, that becomes a problem. That becomes a real problem. So, anyway, that guy, the first thing you should do at least contact your doctor and have a good conversation with the doctor saying, okay, what's going on here?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
If he's really concerned about that.
There might have been another pharmacist in that Walgreens who would have handled it.
Maybe.
I'm getting to that.
Okay.
She eventually got the medication after the prescription was transferred to another location across town.
Okay.
And this was done after she had left the pharmacy in tears. She got a notification that it had been sent to another pharmacy. But it's disturbing that any pharmacist would take an already traumatic situation and make it much worse by implying that she was doing something unethical.
Yes.
The pharmacist in question, Brian Hrennick, used his personal beliefs, he called them his ethics, to condemn Ortega, who is already struggling because he holds the absurd belief that inducing miscarriage for a child that will never exist is the equivalent of murdering a baby.
Yeah.
There were other pharmacists working that morning, but none of them were able to give her the medication for some reason. Like, I don't know. They never stated anything about a reason why they couldn't.
This is a pharmacist. He should know better than this. He really should.
That's a national chain in the States. And like CVS and some of the others. So it just I'm wondering how Walgreens is going to deal with the fallout. I just wonder if those pharmacists in some way said, heck, the baker doesn't have to bake cakes for same sex. Maybe we don't have to give medication for abortion.
It's exactly what I said. Remember when that thing came down? When it came down, I said, there might not be any legal repercussion, but there will be some repercussion outside of it, and this is what we're seeing.
But I'm thinking that there's got to be consequences for that particular. Well, we'll have to see.
Mm-hmm.
We probably will never find out, but that's.
Well, who knows? Like the sushi lady, this story might come back.
We'll see.
In a statement to BuzzFeed News, Walgreens spokesman James Graham confirmed that company policy allows pharmacists to step away from filling a prescription for which they have a moral objection. Arizona is one of 6 states in the U.S. where it is legal for a pharmacist to refuse prescriptions related to contraception if it conflicts with their religious or moral beliefs. Walgreens dealt with a similar situation in New Mexico just last year when pharmacist Jesse Garrett wouldn't give a mother birth control for her daughter because he had a pretty good idea why the girl wanted it. Walgreens made the same excuse then, too. Their policy permitted that kind of behavior. As I said then, Walgreens should guarantee that if a prescribed drug is in stock, someone in the pharmacy must be able to fill it. A Christian pharmacist's beliefs shouldn't inconvenience a patient's needs.
Yeah, it's pretty basic.
So
if you're selling the damn thing,
so Walgreens has to abide by the rules in those 5 or 6 states.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they have to accommodate the customer by having her referred, which didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I do believe that Nicole Ortega, the lady that is been going through all of this, I believe she did file complaints and things like that with I believe with Walgreens, and she did go back to her doctor, and so I don't know what's necessarily come about from that, but hopefully there's some repercussions there.
Let's hope.
And some things change.
Because the spokesman can put a spin on it, for Walgreens, but now we're going to have to see, maybe the ACLU will get involved. But that's good coverage. You really covered all the angles on that, Kirsten. Yeah.
But at the same time, could somebody go in there and filling a prescription for their antidepressants and be like, oh, I don't believe in that.
Yeah.
Like that could
I don't
cause.
believe you're depressed.
Like they could believe you're possessed by demons, so I can't go against the demons.
Like if that's your beliefs and you're going to come across that, why would you choose this profession?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now back to a little bit more comedic. And it's too bad Christina's not here because it's Alex Jones.
Oh boy! Let me get comfortable
Alex
for this.
Jones and the Swish Lady all in one.
I know we're being
episode.
treated today.
Wow.
Pedophile spiritual vampires are feeding on the essence of children.
Hold on. Pedophile spiritual vampires. Okay. Where do we start? Pedophile spiritual vampires.
Do we need to go any further with that story?
No, probably not. I give it a 10 out of 10 on not credible at all. Somebody listens to this on a radio. Pedophile spiritual vampires what are they doing?
Feeding on the essence of children.
Pedophile spiritual vampires are feeding on our children. I don't know. I think I'm calling the cops when I hear that. There's a madman on the loose, obviously.
Obviously, he does. Obviously, they don't get invitations to the mansion.
Yeah, of course. The spiritual vampires are not partying with Jesus.
No ice cream for you.
So what does a spiritual vampire do? Please enlighten us.
Well, Alex Jones shot a video with his friend John Abiscaron while vacationing in Hawaii, in which the two men asserted that, first of all, President Trump is being used by God to take down a global pedophile ring that is filled with spiritual vampires who feed on the pure essence of children. After Jones claimed that the media has been brutally persecuting Christians in an effort to destroy the faith so that they can then be God, Abiscaron said that atheists have a demon inside of them that is fueling their bloodlust against Trump.
Hold on there. How do we get from spiritual vampires to atheist demons here?
It's Alex Jones. That's how you get there. Come on.
How did that happen?
I don't know.
So are we the spiritual vampires all the time?
I think it might be making a little bit of a link there.
Oh God.
They're naturally
I will suck your spirit.
They're naturally going to reject what is from God, Abiscaron said. That's why you see people rejecting Donald Trump. Jones said...
Because when I think look at Donald Trump, I see God right away.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I don't drink wine. That's how... I don't drink wine.
I only play at Mar-a-Lago.
Jones said that people love Trump because he never was a hypocrite. and is being used as a weapon against the enemy by God. Later, Abiscaron praised Trump for arresting the pedophiles like crazy, insisting that Donald Trump has been sending raids, capturing and finding children in cages waiting to be tortured and ritually sacrificed. And wow, that is impressive how I pulled that one up. I was not planning that.
So God's weapon against spiritual vampires that are sucking children dry because of atheist demon is to use a 70-year-old failed businessman turned politician.
That is also an orange.
That's about the flavor of an orange sickle. And that's God's weapon?
I am so glad you explained that. I feel so much at peace now that I know.
It's pure evil, Jones responded. They're vampires. They physically want to feed on the children. If they can't actually sacrifice them, they want to suck their essence out and ruin their innocence.
Okay, Kevin, our show is now over.
Well, yes.
Our
we
show,
can't top that.
It's no longer Left at the Valley.
No.
We're done.
Yeah.
Kirsten's going to come on every week and just read
another brilliant moment.
Brilliant. The show is now Kirsten's another brilliant moment.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't do anything.
Alex Jones edition.
Yeah, Alex. Each one would be like Swish Lady edition. That's it. We become redundant and
absolutely.
irrelevant.
No, I totally agree. We need to, or at least start a new podcast and just make it that.
Well, I don't know.
Following Alex Jones.
Either one. I just
decoding Alex Jones.
Yeah, I can't. We can't compete.
No,
with
we can't
Kirsten's
compete
stories.
with and these stories are obviously so far beyond us on a realm of psychic sucking.
They're out there in the universe.
I give up. This species has done. It's done.
I'd be really curious to see what they have to say on with what they say here about him sending raids and capturing and finding children in cages. What they have to say about that one now from when this story was done.
Well, it's obvious this is what's happening, right? The atheist demons are trying to cross the border with kids, and then the kids end up being put in cages by Trump, who's trying to save them, and then the psychic vampires are obviously coming in there and sucking the kids dry. That's it.
And that's why they can't find them.
That's why we can't find them. That's right. That's why they had to put them in Walmart, because we all know vampires don't like to shop at Walmart.
No. It's because you have to give vampires permission to enter your premises.
Oh, in Walmart.
Do they need permission? I didn't realize.
Apparently Walmart won't give you permission.
Do you know Walmart has a bunch of vampire workers? That's why they have a greeter. To invite them in.
They usually look more like a dead mummy. She's talking about the giving permission that was out of a movie. Which movie was that? That was
I don't know. I've only seen the meme.
No, there was a movie that popularized that the vampire needed permission for them to enter your house. Otherwise, you were safe.
Oh.
Now you need to bless your house. You just need to give him permission to enter.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he couldn't attack you. Anyway, so it's one of the 80s movies.
Are you sure it wasn't like, I've never watched The Walking Dead, but are you sure it wasn't like an episode
it could be
of The
that
Walking
too.
Dead?
God knows.
Yeah.
I mean, even The Walking Dead is starting to make more sense than the Talent shows at this point. All right. Well, while we're done sucking kids dry of their spirit,
Can we recover from this? I mean, in all honesty, can we recover? Can we recover from this?
There's been a lot of sucking lately on the show. Sucking vampires now, and a couple weeks ago was sucking graves, and
grave suckers.
Grave
that's
suckers,
right.
and now vampire suckers, and what's next?
Ooh, I wonder if the people that live in which graves get sucked then become the sucking vampires.
That's it.
That could be.
Yeah.
Well, our theory was that if they were atheists that they were sucking, that they would be deconverted,
Yes. And then they turn
all
from
this
demons, right?
There's no reason to reject any part of this story.
Yeah.
It all fits in.
We can all make it a big link.
We
This is
can.
almost good enough for a movie. Call Hollywood right now. Thank you, ladies. So let's take a quick break.
Thank you, Kirsten. Brilliant.
And when we come back, we'll be with Bernard Lamborelle. Let's talk about the covenant. So stay with us.
If your skepticism is socially conscious and doesn't take itself too seriously, you might like Life, the Universe, and Everything Else.
Great comfort, his big stumper was literally, which came first, the chicken or the egg?
A lot of the interviews took place in front of a building that said liberal arts. I'm guessing that they're not all science majors.
Life, the Universe, and Everything Else. Available on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else. I don't know, Zoom? Is that still a thing?
A Canadian, a New Yorker, and a Southern belle walked into a podcast, and all hell broke loose. Seriously, though, what happens when we three ladies get together? Well, definitely a lot of talking. And accents. Funny accents. Well, I don't have an accent, but my co-hosts sure do. We mix North, South, and the Great White North together for 2 hours of pure secular discussion. Nothing is off limits. From goofy religions like Scientology, woo like ghost hunting and alternative medicine, to hardcore history, hermeneutics, sex, and science. We cover it all. What the heck is a hermeneutic? Well, it's not a guy named Herman who sings falsetto, that's for sure. Join Beth, Ashley, and myself, Deborah, every Monday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, and we take you beyond the trailer park and bring the conversation to life. Join us live on YouTube and participate in the conversation via the Q&A system, or catch us later on Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, and Nobex. Visit www.beyondthetrailerpark.com for links to the show and our upcoming schedule. Bring your wine and sweet tea and settle in for fun facts and free thinking. We happily wear the explicit tag, though, so make sure to wash out your mouth with something tasty before listening. That's live at 9:30 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. Come give us a like and a share, no matter what type of accent you have.
Every night on television we see satire, we see comedy, we see people poking fun at politicians, at all sorts of things. Why should religion, especially the Muslim religion, why should that be immune from people making fun of it? Not that this is making fun of it, I understand, but even so, why should you think that Islam should be uniquely immune from the things that politicians are not immune from and the rest of us are not immune from? Why are you so privileged in taking offense?
Oh, well, joining us online is Bernard Lamborelle. He's an author and engineer. He's a snappy dresser and a snazzy dancer. Bernard, thank you so much for joining us at Left of the Valley.
Hey, Kevin. Nice to be with you. Glad to be on the show.
Well, welcome.
Bernard, you sent me your book, The Covenant, and it's an extremely interesting book. But before we dive into it, maybe you'll be so kind to give us a quick bio as to who Bernard Lamborelle is.
Yeah, sure. Well, my current day job is more into computer storage, high performance storage, cloud computing, that kind of stuff. So I'm an engineer, and I like objective analysis and science, and kind of got involved into this research about 15 years ago when I came across one chapter in the Bible. That was the chapter on Abraham and the covenant, and that kind of took me down the rabbit hole.
So you just stumbled upon that, and it gave you the idea to do more research into the book?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. I mean, well, I was born and raised in a kind of in between a mother that was quite religious and a father that was more of a skeptic and an atheist. So always had kind of both an interest in the topic, curiosity, but at the same time approach it with a more of a skeptical, logical perspective.
Well, God works in mysterious way, now. You might
He
not know
does.
this, but Left of the Valley is a Christian podcast. No, it's not.
No, I think that's a great perspective between having the religious background and then having the skeptical, being able to have an objective look and yet with the understanding of where the religious or the mystical or that part of it comes from.
You're right, and Nancy, that I strongly believe that spirituality is an important component of the human experience. I when I started out in this project, I considered myself more of an agnostic than an atheist per se, and I still do not consider myself a hardcore atheist. I do like the idea of that there's something more, maybe than just a materialistic perspective on life. But I was raised thinking and understanding that the Bible was not a body of literally, should not be taken literally. That was basically just myth and legend. And so when I started reading the story of Abraham, and I just had this idea that, the story, when you read it, actually looks more like Abraham is in presence of an important person more than a god. I'm just thinking myself, if I was to meet God, I would be in absolute awe, and I don't think I would worry too much about what to eat at this point, and how to bake goods and that type of stuff, and so that was the first kind of question that triggered my interest in rereading that story. And I never thought or anticipated it would have been so productive and neither so long of a journey either.
Well, just out of curiosity, did you originally read it in English and French, and did you go to the Hebrew or the Aramaic, or what background did you bring to it in terms of languages?
Yeah, excellent question. First, I can't remember if I was reading it in French or in English. It was one of the two. And at the time, I had absolutely no expertise on Hebrew. So I was just reading it out of a translation. And actually, I did a fair amount of work just using the translation because, when you look at a text from a theological perspective, and you run across a statement where, Abraham is basically eating with God, there's so many take you can have on that. What does it mean spiritually? While if you look at it from a very literal, and you picture this God as a mortal, just as a human being, it's quite simple. It's pretty basic. The guys are just breaking bread, and so the translation is not that critical. I eventually ended up taking 2 years of Hebrew class, biblical Hebrew, to be able to dive deeper. But that only took place, almost 10 years after I started questioning the the story.
2 years of biblical Hebrew. Oh my God, that must have been horrible. But the great thing is, this is what the premise of your book is. You claiming in your book that the character of Yahweh was essentially, most likely, just a guy, just a mortal man.
Yes, and I believe what's been the most amazing part of this investigation is the fact that nobody has ever investigated that possibility, and and I've been looking into it for many years. I mean, the only reference is Herbert Spencer that I found, which was a philosopher a century ago, who also suggested that Abraham's Lord might have been just a mortal. But in terms of scholarly research, it seems nobody has ever taken that approach and tried to look at the text and even the history of the Bible using that premise. And yet, when you start looking into the Bronze Age, you realize that the ancient Israelites or the Canaanites were celebrating the cult of the ancestor. And I knew nothing of that when I started this work. And I started out just from the text, looking at the text, and actually, I can tell you how it went for the first day. Because I just started looking at the story in the Bible, and I reread the story, trying to visualize, just picture in my mind mentally, if the story would even hold by visualizing a mortal overlord as opposed to a god. And I was just amazed at how much more logical and how some of the pieces of the text that normally do not fit started fitting and making sense. And the whole thing just light up and all revolved around essentially subduing the region of the valley of Siddim, which is where we find Sodom, and that's the valley that basically connects Egypt with Mesopotamia. So if you go back in the Bronze Age, Mesopotamia, which is today Iran, was kind of extending all the way up to Turkey, modern Turkey, and then you had Egypt, and so that piece of land in between, which today is Israel and Lebanon, used to be a trade corridor, and so it started making a lot more sense that this overlord would have sought to essentially keep control over that region. And anyway, the whole text made a lot of sense until one point, and when I ran into that problem, I almost gave up because I'm like, okay, good, this idea makes no sense. and that particular point in time was when God or the Lord asked Abraham to sacrifice his son, Isaac, right? Because that's kind of the climax of the story that we're told. Everybody knows the story of Abraham through the sacrifice of Isaac. And yet when you read the story literally in the Bible and you visualize this Lord being a human, you realize at some point that he is the one. He's basically asking Abraham, hey, because Abraham is unable to have a child with his half-sister Sarah. And so the story goes that Sarah offers Abraham her maid, Hagar, and Abraham is able to conceive a child, and that's Ishmael. But the Lord is not happy with Ishmael and tells Abraham that he will have a son through Sarah. And then at some point in the story, the Lord asks Abraham, where is Sarah? And Abraham tells her, well, she's in the tent. And then a little later, the Lord goes in the tent, does unto Sarah what he said he'd do, and 9 months later, here comes Isaac. And so this is literally in the Bible. And when you visualize this Lord as a human, we've all learned from our childhood that the spirit of Yahweh visits Sarah and facilitates her becoming pregnant, right? But when you read it literally, it's pretty obvious that the guy is basically the one who fathers Isaac. And it's very interesting when you look at the text itself, because it clearly spells out that Isaac is the son that Sarah gave him, and there's a difference in the way the text speaks of Isaac and speaks of Ishmael, and clearly Ishmael is the son of Abraham, and Isaac is the son that was kind of given to Abraham in some ways, and so anyway, when the Lord asks Abraham to sacrifice his son, then there's a problem, because if you read the story as it's written in the Bible and it says, well, he's asking him to sacrifice Isaac, you're going, well, hold on, there's a problem here. If Isaac is really his own progeny, he's not going to ask Abraham to sacrifice him. And so, I at that point I started questioning the whole reading I was giving at it, and I was about to give up until I started wondering, well, is there anybody else who maybe had suggested that Ishmael would be the son that should be sacrificed and not Isaac? And at the time, and we're back 15 years ago, I didn't know, but it didn't take me long to realize that for half the believers, for Muslims, they believe in the same story, except they disagree on that one point. For Muslims, it's Ishmael that the Lord asks for sacrifice, and for Jews and Christian, it's Isaac. And that was kind of a trigger for me, because I figured, okay, if they both agree on the same story, except on that little difference, there might be a historical reason for that discrepancy, and that kind of started a bit of an investigation.
Well, I will tell you one thing. Whichever way, whether it was Isaac or Ishmael, that conversation when they came back between Abraham and that kid was really awkward. Really, really awkward. You weren't really going to kill me, were you? No, I wasn't.
Just a joke.
Yeah. Hey, prankster, man. Prank war.
Right. But, so, that was, I would say that was kind of the first awakening for me. And from there, I started really investigating. First of all, started rereading the text, trying to find issues with it. And the more I read it, the more I actually found that everything made a lot of sense. And but it was still, I figured, well, if this is the case, then maybe we have to find some more traces of that in history. There has to be evidence of this. And so that was a fair amount of my investigation. That was to try to find evidence supporting this idea.
Before you go into that idea, if you know what, the way you said that, the way you looked at this character of Yahweh simply being a man, I think is brilliant to begin with. And it's true, because we never think about it. We really never think about it. And you talk to Christians, the first thing like our friend Aaron Ross says, they love to read between the lines, but don't read the line. Right? They like to read between, this is what this means, and this is what that means, and door does actually mean window, and transcendence actually means there was a rock over there, and blah, blah, blah. They do that all the time. But you're taking the story as it's written, and as it was probably proposed to be read anyway, and you're finding new meaning into it. So what other clues in the story of Abraham did you find that Yahweh might be just a guy?
Well, there's a number of clues in the story itself. The first clue, first of all, you have to approach the story I'd say either from the forest or from the trees. So when you step back and you look at what is this story, what's the purpose of this story, and you look at all the exegesis that have been made on this text, and there's clearly some issues with the text. There are issues, especially with Genesis 14. And Genesis 14 is this chapter where we have 4 Mesopotamian kings that come to subdue the people of Sodom. And actually the chapter starts by telling you that the people of Sodom had been vassals for 12 years. And then they decided to revolt. And then there's a punitive campaign from those 4 eastern kings that come to basically just put them back in their place. And as they do that, they take away Lot and all the goods, and they run away. And when Abraham learns about the fact that his nephew Lot had been taken away as captive, he basically, puts a little army together of 300 people and chases them, runs after them, and he attacks them by night, and he's, I guess, somehow lucky, but he manages to defeat them, and he brings all the goods back. And so you're going, well, wait a second, this guy just defeated one of the most powerful army at the time. There has to be a follow-up to that. Either they're going to retaliate, or, which is a possibility because Mesopotamia is so far away, they might make a covenant with him. And that's exactly what happens in chapter 15. The Lord sends a messenger and tells Abraham, that basically he's going to make him great, and he's going to give him the land of Canaan in exchange for his absolute loyalty and all that. And just a little later, basically the Lord, which we view as God, basically is unhappy because he keeps hearing some rumors rising from Sodom. The people are still there, wicked people. Now, what does wicked means? Wicked and sinners. Well, I think it just means that they rejected his authority, right? They had been vassals for 12 years, and so they don't want to submit to this guy, and so they keep revolting. But Abraham has just been kind of put in charge of the whole place, and so the Lord tells Abraham, listen, I'm going to destroy this city. And Abraham says, well, wait a second, if you find just a handful of people willing to submit, you're just, you should be able to save them. And the Lord basically agrees and kind of sends his messenger over. And when the messengers get to Sodom, and by the way, we always think of angels, because in the book, in the translation, it talks about angels. Yeah. But when you look at the Hebrew text, it actually says malak. And a melech is a king. Malak is a messenger of the king. And even angelos in Greek means a messenger. And so, so it's pretty clear that these are just guys that are going to inquire of the situation in Sodom. And they're basically being taken to task by the people of Sodom. Again, you have to realize these people were vassals for 12 years. They've been beaten up badly, and now these guys come to see what's the state of their submission, and then we learn in the Bible that these people, the people of Sodom, they want to sodomize these messengers. Well, I don't think they're trying to sodomize them for carnal pleasure. They're just trying to sodomize them so they can feel the pain of submission that they have endured themselves, during 12 years as vassals.
Oh, God, that's absolutely brilliant. My mind is just blown here the way I'm thinking about this. Sodom and Gomorrah would be nothing but a military conquest.
Exactly.
Oh, my God. That's just...
Yeah, I believe the people of Sodom are freedom fighters. It's just that the story was not recorded. It was recorded by the winners, not by the losers.
Yes.
And we see that time and time over in history.
So when Lot and his wife escape the city, they're not escaping the wrath of God that comes down. They're escaping essentially the army that comes and takes down the town.
Exactly. Just destroyed the whole thing.
Wow. I'm sorry, again, I just fell off my chair here.
so that's the story from the 10,000 feet elevation view. You can actually see how all these pieces make sense. It makes perfect sense. It makes sense from a historical context. This is exactly the type of stuff that was going on back then.
Yes.
And when you dive into the text and you look at the actual detail of the text itself, it gets validated. And one of the most amazing thing I found is that, scholars look at this text and they say, well, this text, has nothing historical. And one of the main reason they say that is because the Jewish tradition says that the story of Abraham dates back from the Bronze Age. Mm-hmm. But we all know that in the Bronze Age, there was no such thing as monotheism, right? Mm-hmm. And so they've been trying to find explanation of how a small group of people could have developed a different religion. But there's no way. That didn't happen. And so at some point they gave up and they figured, well, that must be just a myth or a legend. Mm-hmm. And the earliest kind of trace of where we think that story might have been put in writing is around the exile, the Babylonian exile, which is about 600 years before Christ.
Yes.
And but what I'm showing in my work, or what I'm arguing for, is that it is impossible that this story has not been written down during the Bronze Age. Like it's impossible that this story could have been passed down with so many hidden details, and that those details would have made it all the way to us. And part of the details has to do with the way you look at the story. There's anybody who's done some Bible study has probably heard of Julius Wellhausen. I don't know if you guys have heard about him, JDP.
No, I'm afraid not.
Okay, so JDP is this idea that, and Julius Wellhausen was a German theologian from a century ago, who basically suggested that the Bible is a compilation of texts that some of the texts were coming from Judea, some of the texts were coming from the north, and basically they were using different names. Like people in the south would use Yahweh as their preferred name for that deity, and people in the north would use Elohim. Mm-hmm. And so when you combine the text, you kind of have some verses that were from the north, some verses from the back, and you kind of package that together. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm making it very simple. It's more complex than that, but that's the basic idea. And what I'm trying to argue is that in the text there is a anthropomorphic character, mm-hmm. and there's a immaterial deity. When you look at the names in the text, sometimes they're both called Elohim or Yahweh, so you cannot look at the name itself. But if you look at the actual context, is Abraham speaking to a deity, or is he invoking that deity? And when you make that distinction and you basically put the name Yahweh onto the anthropomorphic one, and you put Elohim on the immaterial deity, what you end up with is a text that is extremely coherent, that shows that anthropomorphic character is all along very consistent, that his motives, that his objectives, and the way he's acting is consistent, and that this immaterial deity actually matches perfectly what you would expect to see in terms of Bronze Age religious experience. It's basically the cult of the ancestors, some local deities being invoked, and so on. Mm-hmm. So
that's absolutely fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Your book has been out fairly recently, right?
Yeah, just a few months out.
How has it been received amongst seculars and of course theists as well?
It's interesting. Well, first of all, there's been no reception whatsoever among theists yet.
Oh, really?
No, because there's like I like to say or put it, people that are ready don't care. People that should care aren't ready. Mm. And what I mean by that is that atheists, by large, don't care. They've already made their mind that the story of Abraham is a myth. There's no point going there for them. Mm. And so, and plus all scholars, not just theist scholars, but even atheist scholars, all agree that the story of Abraham is a myth. And again, we have to look at why they believe that. And that's part of what I do in my book, is to kind of deconstruct what are the evidence, how have they interpreted the evidence, and it all starts from the premise that this is a religious text. And if you take that attitude, if you look at the text as a religious text, there's no way you can conclude anything else but the fact that it was a late composition. But the minute they're asking the question and you pose the premise that this, if this text was not a religious text but was actually a secular text that was basically describing a secular covenant made with a Mesopotamian overlord, then everything has to be revisited and everything works. But it's not easy to bring people to change their mind and be willing to adopt a new perspective. So I'm still working on that.
Okay, so let's say, for example, let's go with your hypothesis. Yahweh is a name they gave to a Mesopotamian overlord at the time. Is there any one of the characters that we know in anthropology and archaeology that would fit this character?
Well, I'm, in my book, because that's obviously kind of the next question, right? Once you've figured, oh, look at this, it looks like there might be a guy here. Then I started looking for somebody, and it's funny because my initial thought was to look in Egypt, actually, because pharaohs were deifying themselves and all that, and so I just started looking into Egypt, but I couldn't really find any profile that would kind of fit. There was some interesting potential match, but as soon as you started digging into it, it would fall apart. It just wouldn't hold. So it was interesting, but nothing serious. And then I started looking into Mesopotamia, and I basically looked at all the ruling kings from 2500 before Christ all the way down to 1300 or something like that. And there's only one character that really stands out as, it's just, I find it quite fascinating how well it fits that character, but it would be King Hammurabi. And King Hammurabi is this one of the great lawgiver of ancient Near East. So it's quite fascinating how we can.
Nancy, were you thinking what I was thinking when he said King Hammurabi?
No.
Our friend Bernard.
You go much deeper than I do. I'm not familiar with the different characters.
We need to have Bernard contact Aaron, and we need to put him in contact with Richard Carrier and Robert M. Price. Absolutely.
Well, I was thinking that before.
I've been in touch with Richard Carrier.
Okay,
I love Richard dearly, and I've taken this class on Bayesian theorem. Yeah, tried to apply that to my work, and tried to engage with him. Part of the challenge Richard has is that I'm no PhD, and my hypothesis is a fringe hypothesis, in the sense that virtually all the work that I've done goes against what scholars have been saying and doing. Yet, none of the facts are different. Like, I'm basically using all the same facts. I'm just changing a premise that nobody has investigated. And I'm trying to show and argue how not only is everything much more logical, but it allows you to explain so much more. And but it will take time. I've come to accept the idea that it will take some time before scholars actually look into it, and I can't blame them. There's so much to look into, so much to revisit in order to be able to validate something like this.
And if there's somebody who would understand that, would be Richard Carey himself, right? The fact that he's a mythicist, he's the first one that's going to admit, it takes time for people to start looking into the idea, accepting it as a possibility.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I think we'd also recommend we got to get him in touch with Robert M. Price. which is
okay.
He's a Bible scholar, and he's an atheist as well. He hosts the Bible Geek podcast. He's a fantastic source of knowledge on anything Bible. I think he would be very, very interested by your premise.
Yeah, I mean, my experience with most scholars up until now is basically when they hear about my work, they just dismiss this completely. They just go, this makes no sense. This guy's out for lunch. But then if they only give me 15 or 20 minutes because I understand exactly what their objections are. I mean, I've been there, I run into them every day. And if I can only explain to them where I'm coming from, why this makes sense, and just give them an opportunity to raise their objections and give me a chance to refute them, then usually we can have a very intelligent discussion, which is a lot more interesting. And and my experience is that again, there's a big difference between, nobody's going to say, oh yeah, this is perfect. Not scholars. Scholars won't do that. They've got too much of a reputation. Yes. They might go as far as saying it's interesting, you should read it. But that's pretty much the extent of which they will go.
But you provided a foundation, and eventually they'll come back to it. Is it frustrating for you to know that so much is there in that book that has to wait until others catch up to it?
Oh, absolutely.
That's what
absolutely. But at the same time, I need to remain, and that's part of the challenge. I'm very familiar with the fact that we're all biased, and our brain plays tricks on us. And even though I'm trying to be as objective as possible and try to, a fair amount of my work has been trying to find just one fact that defeats this hypothesis. Because it only takes one. One solid fact in history defeats the whole thing. And I just haven't been able to find anything. I found a lot of objections that were based on interpretation of facts and based on arguments, of just the fact that everybody thinks this is this way, so it should be this way. But nothing based on actual facts.
Well, you join a long illustrious line of scholars and researchers who have found a little bit of truth, have found something that sets the world on edge and has to go through that period of being dismissed and being called a pariah or be called, whatever name it is. And then suddenly, it's like Semmelweis, easily you just have to wash your hands and things will, not cause infections. It's the same thing, and it does put you in a frustrating position, but eventually you will be redeemed, which doesn't make a whole lot of comfort at this point, but congratulations for sticking to it and for finding it and for being there and being willing to educate those who will have the integrity and the honesty and the patience to listen to you.
Well, this is what I like about his book and his premise. It is so brilliantly simple. Yeah. I've always had this nagging thing in the back of my mind that people describe the Bible writers as these illustrious poets that were trying to convey this hidden message in allegory and metaphor. It's like, no, you talk about goat herders. You talk about very simple people. Why would they not write word for word what they think happened? Why does it have to be much more to go beyond the text? Why not take the text at face value as told from a man from the era? And your book just brings that right back into the face of people, and I think that's what's brilliant about it.
Well, thank you. And I do believe that once you've set that premise and you look at the rest of the Bible, everything also makes sense. You can see the evolution through the text, and you have archaeological evidence allow you to confirm that as well.
And this is also what explains why Yahweh or God is so quote unquote human in so many ways in the Old Testament.
Because he is.
He's angry. He wrestles a guy. He wants an offering of foreskin. Who the hell wants that when you're a divine super being? It's the dumbest thing in the world. But if you're some guy from the Bronze Age, it makes all the sense in the world all of a sudden.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying is completely true. I mean, the only caveat I would say is that it was also the case that gods were, anthropomorphic, much more so, throughout the Near East. So not just in the Levant, but pharaohs,
yes.
The Egyptian gods, the gods in Mesopotamia, and all that. So it's not unique. But I think what is unique about the story of Abraham is that once you pose this mortal as a god, none of his deeds are supernatural. He just looks like a very regular guy looking for something very simple. He needs somebody to manage this land, and he needs a perpetual covenant because he doesn't want to have to come back every year and deal with this issue, and so he's trying to father a descendant, a heir that'll be the perfect heir, and that's who Isaac turns out to be,
and somebody who would be loyal to his throne.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh God, it makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. This is one of those situations. It makes too much sense for it not to be true. It's just
well, that's the all you're saying is very interesting, because people who read the book and do not have a scholarly degree, for them it just makes so much sense.
Yes.
And yet people that have a scholarly degree, that are very skeptic, because I think there's two ways to read a text. One way is just to look for things you disagree with, and one way is just to try to absorb the content. And I think the very few scholars that have looked at it, have taken the first approach. They're so convinced that it cannot be correct that they're only looking for, what they disagree. And so far, all they've come up with are little details that change nothing in the sum of the work. So.
Wow, fantastic. So now that you've done this book, is there going to be a follow up to this book? Is there another one coming up?
Well, I think I'm going to keep busy for the next few years trying to argue and try to give some visibility to this work, because ultimately I'm doing this because I don't know if you'd agree with me, but I find that religious fundamentalism, which is kind of in the rise a bit everywhere, is such a plague to our world. It's such an insult to human dignity that I've been trying to find a failure in this interpretation, and I'm only out here trying to uncover something that might potentially help us get out of this mud that we're in. Because I think if we can offer a very scientifically proven, or at least if scholars can come to agree that this is how it happened, imagine the impact on religion.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you can tell guys like Ken Ham, all night long that the Ark of Noah's Ark is a myth. That won't prevent him from believing in it. No. You can tell him all you want that the covenant with Abraham was a myth. You can try to prove him that it was a myth. The minute it's a myth, it gives him the ability to say, well, as you said earlier, God works in mysterious ways.
Yeah.
But if you can provide scientific evidence and show that the text makes so much more sense, and you can actually trace the evolution in history of how it evolved, you can read in the Bible and see, look, this is what happened here, this is how it happened here. Who's going to want to put their faith in King Hammurabi?
Exactly.
And see King Hammurabi, or whoever king it might be, if it doesn't turn out to him, but in a mortal lord, and just like a regular secular covenant, that forces people to do a deep analysis of their faith, I believe.
And you know what? I will totally agree with you, and I'll take it one step further. Although you don't have to agree with me, but I truly believe that for mankind to move forward, religion has to die. It really needs to happen. We need to really shed that Bronze Age belief, that stupid Bronze Age belief that's holding us back.
Yeah, in terms of from a fundamentalist perspective, I totally agree. Now, I believe spirituality is not necessarily a bad thing, and I think no matter how hard we try, we're not going to make religion disappear. But I think if we can just see doubt, doubt is the only thing that kills, that gets people to kill other, to judge other, and all that. I think if we can bring them to just doubt enough, I still believe in the Bible, but if the doubt is good enough, are they going to go as far as killing for the Bible? I don't think so. Exactly.
Bernard, thank you so much for bringing us attention to this book today. We wish you the best.
It's groundbreaking and so many different levels, and you have your work cut out for you at this point.
Absolutely.
In talking with other scholars and atheists and religious people and spiritual people to bring this to their attention, and then let their own curiosity and research come to the same conclusions, because they are going to have to dig in just as you did and look at it, and then come out the other side saying, aha.
Or prove me wrong.
Wrong.
Either way it's good.
Exactly.
Either way we're making forward. We're going forward.
Exactly.
Bernard, do you think you're planning on going on some kind of book tour with your book?
Well, if there's demand, yes.
Why not?
But I think the book hasn't been out for a long time. I'm not, this is for me just kind of a part-time, I call it a hobby or whatever, my passion. But, obviously being able to get on a show like yours and being able to talk about it is so important. So I'm so thankful for the opportunity to be able to talk about it, because that might bring a couple of people and who knows, maybe even a guy like Aaron Ra to take a look and engage and have an intelligent conversation. That would be wonderful.
Certainly hope so, but don't get any delusion. This show is pretty much the bottom of the barrel, right? You can only go up from here.
It only takes one. It only takes one listener. That's all it takes.
I'll tell you, we have great connections, so we can help you. We can certainly help you with connections. We have no lack of good connections.
Bernard, before I let you go, I gotta have you say hello. I'm Bernard Lamborelle, and I took a left at the valley.
Hello, I'm Bernard Lamborelle, and I'm so happy I took a left at the valley.
And that was Bernard Lamborelle. What a thought-provoking book.
I love that.
I am stunned by this.
Yeah. As someone who's totally, as you know, unfamiliar with the Bible, it makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't it?
It makes sense. So much sense. And it fits everything that we've learned throughout years of like I said, we were talking to Aaron Ra a couple of weeks ago, about the Christians, they read between the lines and never read the line. And then Richard Carey saying, gods are anthropomorphized. It was a fashion thing. They were in the sky and they came down. They have these adventures on Earth. Well, this was kind of like the other way around. It started as a real guy. And remember even that story we had last year about that when they found that sex doll in Indonesia, and within 2 months, and this is in 2017 or 2016, and within 2 months, there was already legends about her being an angel and crying, and this is in 2016. Yeah. So, given so many hundreds of generations in the Bronze Age, how quick would Hammurabi need to become Yahweh, to become a god? How quick would that happen?
It would be so fast.
It would be very fast.
Well, I'm totally impressed with the dedication that he had in answering that curiosity question of his. He learned Hebrew. He went to a Bible study. I think he got a degree.
Yeah.
He studied biblical Hebrew and went to a theological school. And if you look at the back of his book, it is extremely well researched. This doesn't coming out of the left, or I think this is what happened, or this could have. It's all based on historical, as much historical research as he could find.
I don't know if he's right or if he's wrong, but to me, that piece of information there almost feels like that piece of jigsaw that just fits in perfectly.
Absolutely.
Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Now I see a clearer image.
It just goes to show that sometimes, don't shy away from the simple answers.
Exactly.
Don't overlook that simple answer because it seems too simple to be right.
Yeah, and he's so open. If he's wrong, he's like Richard Carrier. If I'm wrong, prove me wrong. But then that will lead to other findings. This will lead to, and it's all part of that scholarship in trying to determine.
We'll have to keep an eye on him for sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, ladies, and to our audience for being with us on the show today. You can find us at leftatvalley.com. You can follow us at Facebook, on Twitter at LATV Podcast. Send us an email at leftatvalley@outlook.com. Send your complaints to Nancy on the 3rd floor. Coming up.
On the balcony of the 3rd floor. Yeah, because now it's summer.
Throw you off. Coming up, we'll have our interview with Seth Andrews. He had to postpone it because he was actually doing the 1,000th episode of the Atheist Experience
He's forgiven.
today. So, so of course, we're just going to wait for him to be a bit more available. And we'll also be doing a Thomas Westbrook from the channel Holy Kool-Aid and the podcast Here and Now. Also, coming up in July, we'll have Scott Marshall talk about love. That should be fun. Love Explained. And we'll have Professor Jerry Coyne. That's also coming back. They'll be talking about will. Do we actually have will? And our old friend, Eli Bosnick, is coming back. And we'll talk about humor. Because nobody can laugh or make us laugh like Eli Bosnick.
I am so excited for this lineup.
He might also have a very special guest coming with him.
Oh, you think?
Yes.
Oh.
And our friend, Dr. Ben Davis, returns. He's going to be talking to us about junk science.
Okay.
He loves to talk about junk science and what is real junk science and what is actually science. And in August, we'll be talking to Anthony Magnabasco about street epistemology.
Oh, I've seen some of his videos.
Yes. With Peter Boghossian and all that.
Yeah.
We'll come full circle.
Yeah,
with
he's
him.
a disciple of Peter.
Exactly, and he's actually a very good disciple of Peter. So it's going to be absolutely interesting to talk to him about that.
Great.
Excellent.
Yeah, lots to look forward to.
Lots to look forward, as usual.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, ladies. Until next time.
The parties of God's hands are bloodstained. Millions of murders by believers, and they're all in God's name. And let me take a sec, don't mean to sound so hateful, but I swear to God, pun intended, I find it disgraceful that many atheists are told to be quiet. You're not alone, speak your mind, time to let it be known. I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen, I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist.